Hello! There's a lot of people here. This is my first time doing a solo panel, so sorry if I'm a little bit nervous. But yes, let me introduce myself. Hi guys! My name's Hannah M. Coleman, but I go by Zell online, and you might recognize me from some fan dubs or comic dubs I'm in as Futaba or Yukiko, and I actually have a cat named Yukiko, so if you hear her talk, that's why. Um, those two characters are the ones I fan dubbed the most. I also voiced Yukiko in the series called Persona 4 What If, so if you've ever seen that, then yep, that was me. Anyway, I'm a big Persona fan, and it's one of the franchises that got me interested in voice acting. I'm currently a student that has been voice acting for almost 4 years, since I was 14, and I'm proud to call myself semi-professional now, so I've been working for a while, meaning I do, paid and unpaid stuff. Mostly unpaid because I don't feel confident enough, but it's okay, which we'll get into that later. But I'm by no means a big professional, obviously, but I don't have any like triple A games under my belt, and I'm kind of in the indie scene, so I do know quite a bit about what goes into voice acting. My goal today is to help anyone who may be interested in wanting to know and wanting to become a voice actor, get their start in the world of online voice acting. I'll also be doing a bit of a Q&A at the end, so you can feel free to start typing questions and I'll do my best to answer them. Again, I'm no professional, but I want to try my best to help those who may have any questions, as I was in your position once. So first things first, I wanted to briefly talk about some of the voice acting you can hear in the Persona games, since this was PersonaCon after all, and I didn't want to do a completely unrelated panel, so I'll talk briefly about the voice acting in Persona. In my opinion, after studying voice acting in different games and media, Persona has some of the best voice acting I've ever heard, English-wise, because I haven't really heard the Japanese much, but I'm sure it's also really good. My personal favorites are Matt Mercer as Yusuke and Erika Harlacher as Ann. I'm also very biased because I love Yusuke, but even in earlier games, the voice acting is really good though, like Tara Platt as Mitsuru or Choi Breaker as Kanji. Love them. Matt Mercer's Premixy, exactly. All the voice actors in the Persona franchise are some of my biggest inspirations, and it was a really inspiring journey for me voice acting wise. Let me know what your guys' favorite voice actors are in the Persona series, because I'm actually curious. Okay. Enough about my Persona opinions. Let's get into the panel. Max Middleman, yes. Robbie Damon, I love them too. So the first question you might be asking is, okay, where do I even start if I want to become a voice actor? And unfortunately, I don't really have a straightforward answer. There's a couple things that you can do, though, and the main thing is just doing it, which sounds dumb, but let me explain. And by that I mean, voice anything you come across, like manga panels, comics, visual novels, games, even books, like anything you can put a voice to. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Even just using your normal voice out loud and reading things can be a gateway into doing like different voices if you want. You can even visualize how a character might sound in your head and try your best to do a different voice if you can. And if you can't, that's also okay, which everyone's natural voice has a place in voice acting, and I will talk more about that later. But another thing you can do is make impressions of different characters. I did this for Danganronpa, if anyone knows Danganronpa, and that was my first introduction into me realizing that I could actually change my voice more than I thought. Let me stress though, impressions aren't everything. You don't have to be an amazing impressionist to be a good voice actor. In fact, having a unique voice is really valuable in the voice acting industry. And later I'll get to why the voice isn't as important as other aspects, so you can understand it a bit better. But for right now, I'll just say, just don't worry about being that great at impressions. Like, everyone has their own unique voice. The most important aspect of this all is just practice and passion. I know that's cheesy to say and all, but I promise you that You won't be able to get very far without practicing different pitches or tones of your voice. As for passion, it's really important that you are having fun while doing it, which again, I'll get to that more later too. Otherwise, it will come across in your voice if you don't really care what you're doing. Trust me, I know from experience, based off of like certain things I've voiced that I wasn't that interested in. It really makes an immense difference if you enjoy what you're doing. Okay, so once you have the voice down, you might be wondering where to go from there, and that's when I'd introduce you to the internet. There are plenty of places you can go to find casting calls. A great place to start would be like for fan dubs and stuff. You can really start building a voice from that, and fan dubs are also immensely popular, so it can help you get your voice out there. And yes, you can ask questions. Later on, I'll be answering them. I might answer them later on in the presentation, but if you still have questions, I'll answer them at the end. But anyway, the main website I used when I was first starting was Casting Call Club. Anyone who's a voice actor in here probably knows about Casting Call Club. It's a voice acting central website that lets you view and create casting calls for voice acting opportunities. A lot of them aren't very well written and are kind of low quality, warning, but there's a lot of good ones out there too, and you can definitely find a hidden gem or two. I just wanted to say that because, manage your expectations. You won't be able to, Casting Call Club, anyone can make one, so that also includes a bunch of 13-year-olds wanting to make FNAF fan games. So just letting you know out there that there's a lot of poorly written stuff on there, but you'll be able to find a hidden gem or two like every once in a while. Someone just left. They were not happy about the FNAF joke. But yeah, so you can also like filter on Casting Call Club for the kind of projects you're looking for, which means you can also filter out things like FNAF fan projects. I'm just no shade to FNAF stuff. It's very good, but Matt has put you on this list, yes. Yes, so you can even filter on there, and when you're just starting out, I suggest auditioning for anything you can. Even if you aren't cast, which I'll deal with the rejection later, it's still a good opportunity to practice. And keep in mind, all auditions on Casting Call Club are public, so anyone can hear them, but that can also be a big help when it comes to getting feedback, so anyone can reply to your auditions and be like, hey, maybe if you try this. But yes, another good place for auditioning is on Twitter, which if you follow many voice actors on there, and not just professionals, the voice acting Twitter community is very friendly from my experience. Also, hello Hoodie. It's very friendly from my experience, and a lot of the voice actors on Twitter, smaller ones, will follow you back, so it's a very mutually beneficial place on Twitter. And a lot of them also retweet casting calls that you can find on your feed, and most of those are very high quality, and some of them are even paid opportunities. So keep an eye out for social media. It can be very helpful when looking for places to audition. The last places you can audition are sites like voices.com or Mandy Voices, both of which have the ability to make a free account but cost money to audition for most or all projects. If you're confident with your ability, then you can go the extra mile to pay on these sites, but definitely explore your free options first. You would be surprised with the amount of places you can get with free options. The good thing about these sites, though, is that you can create a profile that any director can see, and they can personally recruit you if you think you fit the bill, so it's worth just making a profile. Now, auditioning. Auditioning is a simple yet tricky process at times. For bigger scale projects, the audition parameters are usually really specific. When auditioning, make sure you read the guidelines the casting call has on what file type to save it to, what to name the file, and what to include in your email or submission. Sounds very complicated, but usually it's very all written on the document. On the more technical end, I'd say don't slate your audition unless explicitly stated. If you don't know what slating is, it's where you introduce yourself in the audio at the beginning and say what you're auditioning for. In my experience, 9 times out of 10, directors probably don't care for this and would much rather not hear that, and the reason for this is because the director or directors are probably listening to a bunch of auditions, and the shorter yours is, the better, even if it trust me, if yours stands out, it will stand out regardless of your like introducing yourself. I'd just say it's like safer that way. Another thing that's important is, this is very specific, but another thing is important is like cutting out all the breaths, your breath intakes in between lines, which is not something many people think of, but it's very important because it's like, it just shortens your audio. It makes it sound a lot cleaner. It's most auditions require you not to process your audio, but I don't think that counts. I could be wrong. It depends on the director, but those get cut out in actual recordings anyway. So yes, Lou, please tell me actually if you think. Usually it doesn't. Okay, it doesn't count. So yeah, muting the breaths just makes it sound like a lot cleaner and less annoying to listen to. It makes it sound a lot more professional. General trimming, yeah, okay. One last thing I'd say when auditioning is to save as a WAV file. WAV, I always say WAV, but WAV file, unless otherwise specified. Other file types usually compress the audio and can make it sound a bit less desirable, like MP3. And the last tip I have is to record multiple takes, but only include the one best take of that line. Which, let me just say, that's not always the case. You don't always have to only include one if you think two of your takes are like really good. But again, usually the audition states like, oh, we only want one take, or we want a max of 3 or something. And there's different ways you can do it, like ABC, where you do line 1, line 2, line 3, and then line 1, line 2, line 3 again. Or AABBBC, where you do line 1, line 1, line 2, line 2. You get it. So there's different ways you can do it. I think I heard this from Kira Buckland, that you should only send in one line that sounds really good, and you can whatever you think sounds the best, and whatever, as long as it matches up with like the what the audition's parameters are, then it should be fine. That's also just to save the director's time. Now, one of the most painful aspects of getting into voice acting is dealing with the rejection. It is incredibly common for every voice actor to face not getting cast for something. Even the professionals deal with this on a daily basis. It's a super rejection-heavy industry. Dealing with rejection can be really tough. I still get just I still get just a bit hurt when I'm not cast for something, even though I've been rejected probably like at least 100 times at this point. So how can you go about accepting rejection? Well, there's a few things you can do. One, don't get too hung up on specific projects you audition for, and what I mean is don't think too much about a casting call after you've sent in your audition. Audition, then let go and forget is a motto I go by. If you constantly wonder about how you think you're doing, you're just going to bum yourself out. So don't constantly check the casting call to see how many auditions it has or what others' auditions sound like. You'll just get too much in your head and stress yourself out. The less you think about the casting call, the higher chance you'll just forget it, and then you may be reminded of it when you get cast, and that's an amazing feeling, is to just suddenly be reminded that you were cast for something. So yeah. And so once you're actually rejected, it's important to remember a few things, which is, one, just because you're rejected doesn't mean you're a bad voice actor, by no means. The director can only choose one person out of probably a very large amount, and they most likely just chose whoever had the most fitting voice, not necessarily the best voice actor. Another thing to remember is to just move on. Don't wallow in the pain of rejection. I know that's easier said than done, but at that point, there's nothing you can do. So you gotta keep your head high and move on, and that's probably the best you can do when it comes to getting rejected from auditions. So my mother mentioned that, people are probably gonna ask about equipment, so I was like, okay, I guess I'll make a short section on equipment. So it's a little bit of a complicated talk because it's very technical, but I'll try my best to explain. I want to go, briefly over, equipment and software for recording. Having a super fancy setup isn't necessary as a starter voice actor, but this could be a good thing to think of for the future if you get into bigger projects. The two most important things for recording quality is your microphone/interface and recording environment. Recording environment can be incredibly essential. Dampening any echo can make even a really cheap microphone sound decent. This can be done by going like under a blanket with your mic or using your closet. There's a lot of voice actors I know that are pretty popular and still, use their closet for recording, and it's a very reliable place. I personally have a booth made of some wood and moving blankets, sound dampening blankets. That's what I'm in right now, and that dampens the echo quite a lot. Thank you to my father for making that. But yes, plaid blankets are the goal. Is the closet studio. Yep. So you really don't realize what makes background noise and echo until you start thinking about how to prevent those things, It's a big mood if you ask me. Okay, sorry, that was bad. The other important aspect to the quality is microphones, which, scary, like, it can get expensive, but I will just say, like, I just wanted to kind of explain the difference between a USB microphone and an XLR. Basically, a USB microphone can be plugged directly into your PC and is powered that way. And XLR, which is like what the industry uses, requires a power source like an interface. I currently use an Audio-Technica AT2020 with a Focusrite Scarlett, 3rd generation. It's like a solo, if that means anything to anyone. But that's what I use. The AT2020 is not the best microphone in the industry, which I'm working on getting a better one. But that's what you have too. Cool. But yeah, so that's there's it can get very expensive. I suggest, if you're just starting out, to start with a USB microphone, because smaller casting calls don't require XLR mics, so USB one will work just fine. 2 cheaper suggestions I have are the Blue Yeti or the AT2020 USB, which I'm biased for the AT2020 USB because that's the mic I use, except for, its XLR version, so it's a little bit better. But they're both, I think, around $100, but are surprisingly high quality for that price. Another option I've heard a lot of voice actors use, which I've never used, is as like very early starting out, is the Blue Snowball, which is about priced around half that, so like $50, but you can expect that the quality is half that too, so it's a little bit less desirable than like the Blue Yeti or the AT2020. It's a cute shape, Lucari says. Yes, it's a little circle, or a little sphere, I guess. And so for so if you're excessively confusing, yes. And yeah, so for recording, right now I'm actually recording on Audacity, which apparently there was like a scandal with Audacity. I don't know about that, but just keep in mind about that. If you're to use Audacity, it's very what's the word? It's good because it's free. And then the other thing I use is Adobe Audition, which is what I use to like edit the audio. Okay, yes, there you go. Just don't get Audacity 3.0. Older versions are fine. There you go, new terms of service. Yes. So keep that in mind when using Audacity. But yes, Audacity is still good. I still use it a lot. I'm gonna wait for you guys to stop typing before I go or finish typing before I go on to the next section so you guys can finish your thoughts. But yes, I'm glad you guys are interested. I'll answer that question later. But yes, so now that we've gone over equipment, it's important to remember a couple things. Well, I have written one thing, but I actually wrote a couple things, so here we go. Dark Audacity, dark mode, that's what I use. Sorry, I got off track. But anyway, so the one thing, or one of the things you should remember is, why are you doing voice acting? And that may sound like a weird question, but it's very important. I previously mentioned that passion was super important in voice acting, but what exactly does that mean? Well, it's simple, I guess. Just don't do it just for the money. If you've been listening this whole time, I'm guessing you don't think this, but I've interacted with some people who think, oh, you get paid a lot in voice acting, I want to do it now, which I've seen that on TikTok, first of all, which is just, it's an ignorant way to look at it. You should really only do voice acting if you want to and if it interests you. Otherwise, like as I said before, it'll show in your voice. Voice acting is by no means easy. It takes a lot of hard work and dedication. Being in it for fame or money defeats a lot of the purpose. It wouldn't feel as good when you reach certain achievements, you know? Also, if one day you find out you aren't having as much fun with it as you used to, there's really no shame in stopping or like taking a break. Your mental health is very important. And if you're not enjoying it anymore, then it's not hard to just, stop doing it. There's no shame. I've seen people on Twitter, like people I used to follow that did that, and it's sad, but, it's important to take a step back and ask yourself if you're really happy with what you're doing. With that said, there's a couple last things I'd like to mention. Here you go. This is the most important part of voice acting are the voice and the acting. Yeah, duh, right? Let me explain what I mean by that so it doesn't sound as dumb. Everyone has a unique voice, as I mentioned before. You can be the best impressionist in the world, but at the end of the day, that doesn't really matter in the industry. What matters is your interpretation of characters and scripts and how you use your own unique voice to make something truly special. Don't stress yourself out too much about it, though. Everyone's voice has a place somewhere. If you don't think you're good at character voices, maybe audiobooks or narration would fit you better. Like, the great thing about voiceover is that there's so many different types of gigs you can do, so keep that in mind and, don't limit yourself to just doing one thing. You can do, just keep yourself open, I guess, is the best thing I can say for that. So, finally, acting. My friend, Lucari, who's here, I believe, said that, who did a similar panel last year, told me this is something she said she's stressed in her panel, and, it's absolutely true. Acting ability is probably the most important thing about voice acting. The voice, equipment, passion, everything aside, okay, I keep bumping my microphone, I'm so sorry about that. You need to know how to act. The bittersweet thing about voice acting is that you are never on camera. Therefore, your facial expressions are never shown, which means you have to leave all the emotions to your voice. You ever notice how dubs of cartoons or anime sound way more exaggerated than if they were live action, not just because they're cartoons or anime, but also because of the voice? That's because voice actors have to use only their voice to perform to the audience, and that sounds, completely obvious to some people, but it's a really daunting task to tackle. Voice crack. No matter how talented you are, your voice can only do so much, so it's good to remember to take care of your voice by doing warm-ups and drinking lots of tea or water. I don't drink tea, but water is good. Don't drink milk, that makes your voice sound worse. Not in general, I just mean before you record. Water. Yeah, water, okay. I personally was already in acting classes before I went into voiceover. So I already had some experience under my belt. If you're new, any type of acting classes or experience can be great, even if it's something like theater. You can check and see if you have any local acting classes, and if not, there's plenty of online classes you can take by industry professionals that will help a lot. Remember, you can have the best equipment and quality, but if you're not great at acting, your recordings won't come out great. So it's really a combination of things. But I'd say that without a doubt, acting is the highest priority when it comes to voiceover, and I'm sure Lucari will agree with me. But with all of that said, I believe that's kind of the end of what I have to say for this panel. But I'm open to answering questions now. So yes, Q&A time. Well, I'd say for me, it's more of my lack of self-confidence that instead of pride that really, made me start hating my voice. I still hate my voice, even though I listen to it on a daily basis. With that, it's more of just a thing you end up getting used to. And for me, I usually change my voice for recordings, so it's a little bit easier for me to listen to my kind of manipulated voice than my normal voice. So yeah, I'd say just eventually you'll get used to it, and for voiceover, obviously it's really important that you listen to your voice, so Yeah. I'd say it depends, I guess. For me, I started out on a laptop, so yeah, I'd say for recording, I know a lot of people that use like laptops for their stuff. If I'd suggest like using at least some sort of computer for it instead of like your phone or something, because um, it's just easier to like set up equipment to your PC than like it would be on mobile. So some of the recordings can get really long, which can take up a lot of your space, so keep that in mind. Of course, any kind of, even if it's just a general acting class, like I think it could be really useful for voice acting. Because you learn a lot of the same fundamentals in acting classes that you use in voice acting. I took acting and improv classes. Improv can be super useful for voice acting because of ad-libbing, which I was actually going to write a whole section on ad-libbing and what to expect in the booth, but that was kind of a little bit more advanced, so I didn't add that. But ad-libbing is just when you add on your own stuff to the lines. This one person I know is really into that, and it always comes out really great. So if you're not confident in your ability to improv, you don't have to do that, but that is a thing you can do. Some directors don't like it, some directors do. It really just depends on, I'd say get to know your director on what they prefer. Doing warm-ups, and like I said before, it's very important. You can do like lip trills. That's a thing I used to do, where you could just go, like roll your tongue, and make sure your throat is safe. If you feel your voice kind of giving out at any point, stop recording. Make sure you drink liquid, and you can hum as well, like someone said in chat. You can do scales sort of thing. Like I've heard some people. Laura Post last year, she mentioned that on her Q&A panel, she mentioned that she sung before her recording sessions. So it's just really important. It's really important to just take care of your voice. You scream. I mean, I guess you could do that. Yeah, keep yourself hydrated. Okay, well, see, the thing is, I get cast, if you know of me, you might know that I get cast for a lot of small lolly type characters that have high-pitched voices, and and so they're very cutesy, like FBI. Okay, listen, I shouldn't have said the word lolly. All right, they're small cutesy characters, and they have very high-pitched voices, and they're very friendly. But the high-pitched voices, my friend Celise in the chat, she's known me for 10 years, and she still can't get used to my high-pitched voices. But yeah. So my favorite type of voice to do, though, would be more of a deeper, like, stoic voice. I like doing, like, a gravelly, kind of assertive character, you could say. Like, kind of like if anyone knows Genshin, a little bit like Beto. I like doing that kind of voice where it's, like, very villainous kind of sounding. Because that's just more fun for me. Or, like, kind of a crazy character. That would also be really fun. Well, Lucaria mentioned earlier that I have a really good range, which I was going to say thank you to that. But see, the thing is, actually, I used to not be able to do high-pitched voices at all. My range, I'd say, I can go as high-pitched as I can without, my voice hurting. So, again, if you're trying to find your range, go as high as you can or as low as you can without hurting your voice too much. Eventually, you can kind of lead yourself up to doing higher voices if you practice enough, but don't strain yourself too much. So yeah, so my high-pitched character is just like, like, hi everyone. I can't even do it right now. I have to warm up my voice. Hi everyone. Like, my name is Rissy. That's one of my characters. I don't think they've ever corrupted. But I have had times where I recorded an audition and then I accidentally forgot to save it, and I was like, oh crap, now I have to redo it. And I remember I really liked that audition too. I was really upset. But, one of those things where it's like, yeah, you just gotta move on, like, oh well, like, redo it. I always say, like, if something like that happens, the next time you do it, you can be even better than you were before, so, you can improve. Absolutely not. A good example of this would be my brother. My brother is 25, and I'm calling him out right now, but he's still trying to figure out what he wants to do in his life, and I'm so mad at that because like he's so talented and like he wants to do voice acting. So every time he comes over to my house, he's like, "Oh, so how do you do voice acting? Blah blah blah." And it's never too late to start voice acting. Even like really famous voice actors, a lot of them didn't start till like later in their life. Like it's something that you might not even realize it's a thing you can do until you're like 30. So don't worry about it. You're never too old to start voice acting. I mean, for me, I started really young. Don't look at that and be like, oh, I had to be 14 to start. Like, obviously, it's not like necessary. I can understand how that can be kind of intimidating, but just remember, you're never too old to start doing it. And then the sooner you start, the more chance you'll start improving. So don't just delay yourself any longer, Direction sessions, yes. I have only done live directions a few times because I'm a very anxious person. So I usually, whenever I can, I avoid that as much as possible, which is a sad thing because, like, in the industry, you're going to have to get comfortable with doing live direction. But a lot of the ones I've had live direction from are very nice and very understanding, and they know what they're talking about. And so I'd say, get to know them as much as you can beforehand, get comfortable with them, start talking to them, and I promise you that as soon as you start doing it, you're gonna be a lot less nervous as you continue, and you know what the voice director wants from you. So yeah. Oh yes, that is about the end. So yes, thank you all for watching, thank you all for listening, and this is recorded, so I will be uploading it to my YouTube later.